Thank you for joining me for this session entitled Developing a Research Question, which is part of the Systematic Review seminar series. My name is Tom Harrod, and I'm the Associate Director for Reference, Instruction, and Access at the Himmelfarb Health Sciences Library at George Washington University. This will be the third session of the Systematic Review seminar series, and here you can see where we are relative to the other sessions that have or will be covered. In the prior sessions, we laid the groundwork for understanding systematic reviews in the context of other literature reviews, and we've looked at some key resources to help you better understand how to perform a systematic review. In future sessions, we'll dive deeper into the specific steps in performing systematic reviews. But in this session, we'll focus on how to develop a research question for a systematic review project. Here's a rundown of what will be covered over the remainder of this session. We'll start with moving from a research topic or idea to a research question. We'll then talk about some of the different ways to frame a research question, and finally, we'll walk through an example of all of this. Often people come to a systematic review with an idea or a topic that they'd like to research. This is, of course, an important step in the process, but that topic or idea must be translated into a research question. As you'll recall, the purpose of a systematic review is to answer a specific question, so a question must be developed to drive all subsequent steps in the systematic review process. So part of what I want to look at in the coming slides is how to frame a research question, as this will help us in the process of translating that question into a complete search strategy. There are many different ways of framing a research question, and before we get into the development of an actual research question, I want to discuss this topic in a little detail. The first of these framing devices is one that might be familiar to a lot of people, and that is PICO. The P stands for population, or potentially problem or person. The I stands for intervention. The C stands for comparison, that is, what is the main intervention of interest being compared to. Finally, the O stands for the desired outcome or outcomes that are used to measure the effectiveness of the intervention among the population of interest. Another way of thinking about this that might resonate more depending on your research background is that the intervention is the independent variable and the outcome is the dependent variable. There are frameworks beyond PICO which may be more applicable depending on the type of question being asked. PICO is great and widely used, but it works better when the question involves some kind of intervention that is being tested. For other questions, something like PO might work better. The P in PO stands for population, problem, or person, the same as PICO. Likewise, the O stands for outcome or outcomes. However, there is an E which stands for exposure. PO is a good framework to consider when the independent variable is not an intentional intervention. For instance, for an environmental question like, does exposure to smog increase the risk of respiratory disease among children living in large cities? For that question, there is no intervention, but there is an exposure, smog. I also list here SPICE, which is a framework used when studying more qualitative types of questions. Let's take a look at an example. My topic of interest is stated like this. I'm interested in doing a systematic review about COVID and exercise among the elderly. This is not stated as a question, so we'll need to do a little bit of work on it, and the PO framework can help us here. So the population of interest, as you can see, is the elderly. The exposure is COVID, and the outcome of interest is exercise. And you can see why in this case I didn't use PICO, because COVID isn't an intervention, it's more of an exposure. However, the PO formulation that I just described raises so many questions. What is meant by elderly? What age range does that mean? Are there any other limitations? Skilled care versus at home? Or maybe geographic location? And what is meant by COVID? Is it those who had COVID or those who lived in the era of COVID-related disruptions? And what is meant by exercise? Formal programmed exercise or just any physical activity? The careful consideration of these PO elements can help us to further refine our research and convert that into a question. So here you can see my updated PO. Formerly, I just said elderly for the population, but by that I now mean people who are 65 plus, who are living in skilled care facilities in the United States. Formerly, my exposure was just COVID, but now I've refined that to COVID disruptions. And formerly my outcome was exercise, but now I've refined that to mean any kind of physical activity. So now my research question becomes, how have COVID-related disruptions affected the physical activity levels of elderly individuals in the US living in skilled care facilities? Hopefully, through this example, you can see how we start with a broad idea for a topic, but that required some work to turn it into a research question, which is necessary as that question will drive the remaining stages of the systematic review project. In this session, we've talked about the importance of moving from a research topic or idea to a research question. We also looked at different framing structures like PICO and PO, which can help you to further refine your research topic as it prompts you to think about the specifics of your topic and helps you to further focus on an answerable research question. This also sets the stage for the creation of a search strategy based on that research question. And that will be the topic of the next installment in this series. Thank you for joining me. I've included my email on this slide, tph@gwu.edu. Please reach out if you are part of the GW community and I can provide any further assistance.